Connor is becoming a mainstay on our Fort Collins live in Fort Collins every Monday at noon. We are going over things that are happening in Fort Collins, things that have happened, things you could do, reviewing city council, some big decisions that are making really a day-to-day life Fort Collins what it is. These huge decisions and conversations that are happening every day that we're trying to bring to you and bring into the light. Connor did some great research. Today at the end, we will go over the city council regular meeting that discussed a few different things. They discussed the extension of the Montava project, and I believe that's just essentially allowing them more time. Xeriscaping, ADUs. There was a couple other things, and we'll chat about them all. But at the end, we'll talk about ADUs, accessory dwelling units that could change the landscape of Fort Collins. But Connor, I appreciate you joining me today, man. It sounds like you guys had a busy weekend showing houses.
Yeah, busy weekend showing houses, did open houses as well and stuff. So full weekend worth of work and stuff. And so, yeah, now it's just going to be probably today a little bit of work and stuff, but maybe I'll take a day off here this week to go out and enjoy the outdoors while it's still getting a little bit nicer finally. And we're out of that cold plunge.
Yeah, man, it was 6 degrees this morning. And then I'm like, thank God, I think that was, we're going to come out of it, see some 40-degree days and some decent temperatures moving forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, after doing like 6 driveways this week and stuff, shoveling and plowing them, I'm ready for a little bit of a break.
Connor told me a funny story the other day. Obviously we're in real estate. We buy and sell properties for people here in Northern Colorado. We're licensed real estate agents. And Connor, probably one of the kinder people, nicer people you're going to meet, he shovels a lot of his neighbors' driveways. And I was talking to him and I asked, how's your neighbor, the one that was kind of talking about selling their house? And he made a comment that said, well, they're never going to move so long as I'm shoveling their driveway. They even said, well, it's nice to have you here. We're never moving, and unless you stop shoveling our driveway. I was like, well, it sounds like you're stopping shoveling their driveway tomorrow.
I was going to say, yeah, we've been talking about it for like 2 years now, and it's just like, yeah, it's so hard for me not to. It's one of my pleasures until you get 5 to 7 inches of snow, and then it becomes less enjoyable.
Yeah, it's so cold and light that like the push is so easy.
Yeah, that was at least the one saving grace on that side. But with the wind that we had the last couple days prior to that, we had a lot of wind drifts that came out too. So I don't know if you've ever hit hard snow over fluffy snow, but jamming that shovel handle into my stomach 5 or 6 times reminds me just how much I hate it.
Yeah, seriously, just one small little crack or little heave in the cement is all it does.
Yep.
It probably is like a 1/4 of an inch, maybe even 1/8 of an inch is all it needs.
Yep. And then all of a sudden you're tripping and falling and sliding on ice.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump on in some things that have happened in Fort Collins over the last week. Obviously, Colorado State University, we both graduated from there. Hugely important to the health and vitality of Fort Collins. And it's a tier 1 research institution, but they just were awarded $326 million in grants to reduce methane emissions. And it sounds like they're kind of dedicated to 3 different projects. But it was of $850 million of investments from the EPA. So, pretty big news for CSU. Again, it's just kind of like one of those things. It's like, dude, all of this vitality, especially because over the last couple of weeks, we talked about it last week, Otterbox losing some jobs. We just, we want to maintain a strong economy and strong, support system when CSU is absolutely a part of that.
No, and then they're going to be, helping the backbone of agriculture, helping the oil and gas fields and stuff like that as well, which is another big industry on the east side of Northern Colorado and stuff. So it's great when you see Colorado State University getting those grants to be able to help and supply, fresh, clean air here, while as well helping our industries that really do, create the backbone of Northern Colorado.
Yeah. And lesser news, have you ever been to the Boot Bar and Grill, which I think it was actually called Backdoor?
Yep.
Did you see that place closed down?
Yeah, I have on that side. And then I've been also, Facebook loves, because I click on the articles all the time. There's been a couple places that have sadly started to think about closing their doors on that side. But yeah, we definitely went out and ate there once when it first opened up, and It was great on that side. You know, it wasn't amazing on that end. I think it's kind of a cursed location from what everybody on Facebook has talked about, because there has been so many restaurants that have come in and out of that area, unfortunately. And so I'm really hoping the new restaurant that will be moving in there, from what I remember seeing, it might be a hot pot place. So it'll be like a family shared gathering where it's kind of like a Chinese Oriental hot pot soup there. You cook your meats in and everything like that. I'm hoping that's going to be what's going in there, and that's what's kind of planned for it. But
Okay.
yeah, the restaurant, you know, the problem was is it was kind of like nostalgia food, but it was kind of expensive on that side. So I just don't think it really hit the demographic compared to some of the other restaurants that are around the downtown area. And so I think it needs a more unique setting, and it doesn't follow along with what all the other restaurants have, which is burgers and steaks and things like that.
Well, and so what? Talk to me about a few other ones, because I believe the Avery is closing down as well.
That's one of the ones I also heard on that side, and I'm trying to remember some of the other ones that were closing down in Fort Collins.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Avery, man, you know, and like they tried a new concept. They they continue to pump money into that building. It's just wild.
Oh man, yeah.
You know, because I mean, even the Avery, the Avery, it kind of changed how the flow was to more of like a walk-up counter order, grab and sit, you know, type of deal. And I've eaten there a handful of times, and I thought it was good. It was definitely expensive, but I would say the one thing that is like just a matter of life at this point is, I think restaurants, you're just going to continue to see increase in cost of going out to eat. It's just expensive.
Yeah, it's a tough industry to be in. I mean, those margins are so tight on that side. And if they're just not getting the activity, I mean, literally one of my favorite places to go eat was the Post Chicken and Beer that took the old IHOP spot right off of College. And I used to go there almost on a weekly basis, just like you go to can't remember what Mexican restaurant you go to on a weekly basis after Tuesday, but that used to kind of be my spot to go and grab a quick meal and stuff. But for 3 chicken fingers for $18, it was a pretty expensive place to go eat, but it was great. But unfortunately, the parking lot was too small, and I think they just really struggled there. And I just think, you know, just because of the cost of running an operation like that, we're just going to see the influx of restaurants coming in and out, and hopefully finding that niche spot that Fort Collins really needs. And that's kind of the nice part is, you know, Fort Collins is finding its niche, just kind of like Denver does. When we went down to Denver to Casa Bonita this last week, and it was fun to go down there, brought back a lot of nostalgia and stuff, but it just reminds me how much Denver has in terms of just the variety of restaurants. And Fort Collins, I think, is trying to mimic that, and individuals are trying to bring restaurants up here as well that are just kind of a little more unique and differentiate themselves from some of the other restaurants we already have around Northern Colorado.
Yeah, I talked with a client that, you know, we're looking at, or we're, you know, under contract, I should say, on a commercial building down in Old Town that is a restaurant space. And, you know, I sent him over a project that's happening that actually Izzy came across over on the Wells Fargo building that's proposed for a renovated office and then a 9-story condo apartment complex building there. And, you know, there's other density projects that are happening. And really, you know, what I see personally is, and it's a really tough balance, because the restaurants and operations that are staying in business are the restaurants that from what I can see, are kind of legacy owners, people who have owned the properties for a long time and don't have to charge significant rents, which you would consider market rents. So, you know, high level, let's just say $30 per square foot is a market rent for a premium location. But, you know, when you start talking about expense ratios and what your housing costs are comparatively to your top line revenue, and it's a really delicate balancing act. And these people who, you know, buy buildings with tenants in them and then have a debt service on it with higher interest rates have to charge some of those market rates, and they can they can get them. You know, it's not that they're not getting them. It's just, is it sustainable for the tenants? So the tenants that have a little bit lower rent that is more comparable to a good ratio for their revenue are staying in business and have been in business for a long time, and then have time to build a brand, a following. It helps. But if you're in business right away and you're being charged top rent, and then you're having to have a huge marketing budget. I mean, it's an uphill battle for a new restaurant that's getting charged quote unquote market rents. But I do talk to these building owners that like the benefit of, let's just say, a commercial tenant who signs a 10-year lease or a 15-year lease, that in 10 to 15 years, let's just say there's 50,000 people downtown. Well, maybe in 10 to 15 years, there's going to be 80,000 people downtown because of all those dense projects that are coming and kind of the growth of that area. Well, then those market rents start to make a little bit more sense. So, long story short, long term, a lot of these business and operations that can stay in business are going to do quite well. But in the short term, it's tough because you can get those $30 per square foot, but it doesn't mean that tenant's going to stay in business a long time. So,
Yep.
Let's see here. Peterson Toyota is expanding. Have you seen the Fort Collins Nissan and then the Fort Collins Kia that's being built there on South College?
Oh, I do. That one light system they put in there just because of that new development out there bothers the heck out of me. I don't like light systems, but it makes sense. I mean, that's a gorgeous building that they put up there, and it looks really clean and nice. I mean, comparative to some of the other places like a Dellenbaugh or even like Toyota on that side, they're looking outdated comparative to what Nissan has done on that side. So I did go over there and check them out, just look at it. I don't know if I'd ever buy a Nissan personally, but it's cool to go see that Fort Collins is starting to really ramp up that side as well on the commercial side, and seeing those big of companies coming in here and seeing that market trend is looking like we're going to get more population, because to be a car dealership out here versus being close to that Denver area, it's got to be a tough business to be a part of. So it's cool to see that they're kind of forecasting out, knowing that that's something that is needed over in this area.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, and they're going to be building the Kia spot as well right there. That's going to look exactly the same.
Yep.
World class. But then it shows that Peterson Toyota is kind of like, all right, shoot, we need to step up our game. So they submitted plans for an additional 25,000 some odd square feet of expansion at their basically Harmony and LeMay operation. So, I guess apparently, why, not why, this isn't the crux of it, because I think it's prime real estate, but the building, the Mazda building on College and Drake.
Yeah.
Well, it was a Mazda dealership, and a lot of these are franchise. I don't know if they're franchises, but they're licensing agreements. I don't know how all of that necessarily works. But Mazda came in to the building owners and landowners and said, you guys have to update to accommodate our branding that we want. And it was going to be, basically exorbitant to not make sense. So that's why they didn't re-sign the lease, and now they're going to be, subdivided. And potentially, that area will be redeveloped. So, there's a brand and an image that these companies are wanting, and it's a cost to do business. We did get a question. Hey, Patrick and Connor, always appreciate these lives. Going to be in Northern Colorado for a month in March. Anything specific, like annual things that we need to check out at that time in March? Man,
March.
Spring break's happening. We do have, I believe there's going to be the NCAA tournament going to be down in Denver. But man, nothing comes to mind specifically in March. We're going to Steamboat for that week, spring break. So you've got a lot of spring break people heading on vacation during that time. But
And I was going to say, so like one of my favorite things to go do is obviously Estes Park is beautiful at this time of the year. And one of my favorite things to go up is called the Frozen Dead Guys Days. And I don't know if you've ever got to go up and experience that, Pat, but it's a big, pretty much music festival, coffee festival. I mean, they have a polar plunge there, a couple other really fun things. And it's just kind of to celebrate the quirky town of Estes Park on that side. It goes from March 7th to March 9th. And it's just a fun thing to do on that side. And then you also up in Estes Park, there are huge art I mean, Estes Park, obviously it's for Rocky Mountain National Park, but they also are a huge art collective out there as well. So they're going to start doing on March 7th, every Friday. They're going to do art walks. So they'll bring out all the art stuff out there. It's going to be cold, so make sure you bring heavy jackets during that time frame. But it's fun to go up there and experience some of the artists that live up there. There's some famous individuals that do art up there and have permanent residents up there as well that do and support their art through that community on that side. So that's always kind of a fun thing to do. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day celebration. So
there you go.
That's a good one to always be a part of over in the Fort Collins and Denver, depending on where you're going to be at during that time frame. So it's a fun thing to go do.
The only question I have on that is, does Lucky Joe's still put on the parade, or do they just do kind of like a big party out on their patio that day?
I think they normally just do the big party now these days. I don't think they've done the parade in the last 2 years from what I remember, at least.
Yeah.
And so those would be some of my main ones, at least.
Yeah. St. Patrick's Day is always fun at Lucky Joe's. It's kind of it's packed house, but all of downtown will be popping at that time. So you can't really go wrong. I mean, I think probably any downtown across the United States, but it's always kind of a fun thing to do and safe. And let's see here. Another question. We've got, when does construction begin for the new reservoir north of Fort Collins? How will the construction impact Fort Collins? Man, I mean, there's numbers out there. I don't know exactly what there are, but I think we're like 10 to 20 years out, don't you think?
I was going to say, I mean, I've been doing things up in Bonner Peak, and when I was talking to some residents out there, which is where the reservoir is supposedly supposed to be going in that area, all of them have been talking, oh, it's coming along. But every article that I've looked at, we're still very far out from it. There's so many logistics that they have to play with. I mean, they have to figure out how they're going to funnel traffic, because they're going to be cutting off a chunk of that 287 potentially to even put that reservoir in there. So Owl Canyon will become one of the main sources for people to go from Fort Collins to the far north side up to Livermore and up to some of the neighborhoods up in that area. So they've been talking about it for like 20 years already on that side.
It's happening. It's not like, it's for sure happening. The NISP project, like the Army Corps of Engineers, it's all been approved. Like it's happening. And it's not like it just is. But I mean, you look at Chimney Hollow, right? And I mean, like that's actively being built, but that's still a few years out because of how long it takes to move dirt and earth and build the dams that are needed. And so, I don't think there's any earth moving out there at this point over at Glade, but all of the behind the scenes, underbelly of the project is happening. But like, if I were to say realistically, 10 years minimum, 10 to 20 years is probably when we'll see the Glade Reservoir, being like built and operational.
Yeah, I was going to say right now we're relatively desperate for water. So as that desperity becomes more and more, I think there's going to be more and more of a push as we keep going through and more developments happen out here. Because I mean, at one point, Northern Colorado had a moratorium on water out in the Wellington area and some of those spots. So it's a really needed resource that everybody here in Northern Colorado is looking for. Developers, the city of Fort Collins, everyone else that's really looking for that source of water. So like you said, it's 100% in the plans. They're just trying to figure out the small logistics that really take to build a reservoir in this area. And I mean, developments take 3 to 5 years before they even get through the development process. So a reservoir is on such a larger scale. So that time frame is definitely going to be pushed out. And I think you're about right. That 10 to 15 year time frame, we'll have a new place other than Horsetooth to go take out the boats and go do some wake surfing and have some jet skis out there.
Yeah. No, it's I think it'll be, because Chimney Hollow is not going to be motorized, but
okay.
Chimney Hollow won't, but Glade Reservoir will.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought Glade Reservoir was going to be one because it was going to be big enough, thank gosh.
Yeah, yep. So let's see here. But let's keep moving because I do want to I'm excited to talk about ADUs here sooner than later.
Perfect.
But actually, little man right here, sitting right here, Northern Colorado is getting a children's museum. It's going to be about 19,000 square feet at what they call the yards in Loveland, the outlets in Loveland. And but that place is kind of making a little bit of a comeback right now. I mean, it's got Gold's Gym right there. It's got Gold's Gym right there. It's got some other operations, the Children's Museum that's going to be there. Apparently, the Children's Museum bought the building.
Yep.
And then they're going to do a build out of it. But I'm just like jazzed for, we've got the Discovery Museum in Fort Collins, but I mean, that's from my house to that is 15 minutes. So super excited to have another thing that we can take the kids to do, especially during kind of these cold snaps, indoor activities and things of that nature. So super excited to see the Northern Colorado Children's Museum.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I don't know if you guys have got to have the experience that maybe once the kids are a little bit older on that side, but going down to the one in Denver, I mean, as a child myself, was probably one of my top 10 favorite things to do as a kid and stuff. So having something closer up here to where you don't have to do a bus school ride down to Denver, it's going to be sweet. And Centerra, they built the road that goes across now that actually kind of conjoins the two areas. So Centerra is now going to be able to have access to that mall as well. There's a road that kind of cuts through now that allows easier access over there. And so that's, I think, one of the big reasons why they're able to actually start kind of seeing a little bit of movement over there. I go and serve over at 6-8, which is just a local voluntary group that does a lot of stuff for the Northern Colorado community in that area. And so it's a little desolate right now, but once that child museum comes in there, I think that whole area is really going to become something fresh and new. And it's kind of exciting to see that Loveland / the Johnstown area is really growing in a good direction, where for the since I've lived in Loveland, it's been kind of dull and boring. And, they just took away the Loveland swim beach, unfortunately, and over off of Loveland Lake. And so it's nice to see that they took away some stuff, but we're going to kind of gain some other fun things for people to do in the summertime.
Totally. Let's see here. Hit on Poudre School District just for real quick, and then we'll jump into City Council. But
perfect.
Graduation rates hit 87.3% for the class of 2024. Goals are for them is to hit 90%. Of course, it's a great school district. Excited to have my kids going through it. We'll have 2 at Werner next year. All righty, let's get going in our City Council review. I'm going to bring up my screen.
Perfect.
Let me get something real quick because it's slide 122. The Elizabeth corridor, the Elizabeth bus rapid transit system is what the other thing that I wanted to talk about was.
Okay.
122. There we go. 122. How often, if ever, do you ride the Max Transit?
Never. I have never even done it. I laugh at it almost every time I drive by it, but that's just my personal thing about it.
Okay. All right. All right. Here's the Elizabeth Bus Rapid Transit System. It's one of the most used transits. This is a lot of CSU students getting to and from school. They're going to have every 7.5 minutes a bus coming through here for the AM peak hours. They're going to have this, I think it's like a $10 million roundabout right here for the Foothills Transit Center.
Yep.
Which is, you can see it right here. And what I really wanted to focus mostly on is because, we talked about timing, right? Somebody asked, what about the timing for the Glade Reservoir? And a lot of these projects, you don't see a Gantt chart that's kind of nice and says, you do, but the Glade Reservoir is not even close, but the Elizabeth BRT is. So we'll see potential construction beginning in 2026 and ending at the end of 2027 for the roundabout. And then the actual corridor project will begin build out in middle of 2027, completing at the end of 2028. And so that does nothing for me per se, but there's 3 BRT systems that the city of Fort Collins has in their master transit plan, which is the Max Transit already built, the Elizabeth Transit that's projected to be built by the end of 2028, and then the Harmony Transit as well, which there's been little to no conversation, but between those 3, you'll have a primary driver east, north and south, and then 2 east and west with connecting buses from there. So the hope and the goal with all of this is to get cars off the roads and more public transportation, but we'll see, because guys like Mr. Mr. Connor Martin need to get their butts on the Max Transit, start getting the ridership up.
I was going to say that is just such a tough one on that side. There's nothing on that line that I could sit in there saying that it's worth it other than the fact just for the idea of trying it once.
Okay.
But I understand it plays an important role here in Fort Collins and the northern Colorado area. And it's nice that they're starting to expand it over into Loveland right off of 37th Street. They actually have a transit bus station that just went in there, I think maybe 6-7 months ago on that side. So it's cool to finally see that it's expanding a little bit and that there's more stops and more availability for individuals to travel around the different cities just versus like the Fort Collins area.
Okay. What's it called? Trivia for you. What is the what's the Loveland's transit system called, or their buses, or at least some of their buses? It's very, you should know it.
You think I pay that close attention to that?
I would say, I should say, if you saw it, you would know it. But it's the Colt. City of Loveland Transit.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, all I see is the advertisement on the buses. That's all I pay attention to.
There you go. A second part, they had Max Moss come up, who's kind of the lead developer, kind of visionary of the Montava project. They are asking for an extension of 2 years to get, because they have their master unit development. I can't remember. They have their master unit overlay, and then they have their planned development. So their phases, and they're asking for a 2-year extension. It was granted, voted 7-0 to yes, extend this. And Montava, it's nice to see like people like Max Moss come up and talk to it, because it's like, all right, well, maybe this will eventually take shape. But he was the first person to, kind of comment like, if I would have, he goes, for the last 7 years of my life, I have been focused on this project every day and every hour of every day type of deal. So one, that's, stressful. But two, he goes, I would have never envisioned the problems we were going to have when it came to easements, different property ownership issues, ditch issues, water issues. I mean, I've told you in the past, I'll eventually maybe one day develop maybe a house or a duplex or a few houses, but I would never. And I've done most things in real estate. I've wholesaled, I've fixed and flipped, I've invested, I've done commercial, I've done multifamily, I've done single family, I've done brokerage for residential for over a decade. I've had my hand in a lot of different, I've done lending, I've had my hand in a lot of different pots when it comes to real estate. But the one pot that I tell myself I'm never going to touch is development.
Yep, I completely understand.
just the variability of economy, the timing that it takes, the problems. I mean, don't get me wrong. And so actually, and I will say now it's kind of a feast or famine for these developers. And when it's feast, they rake in the money. And but when it's famine, I mean, it's not good. It can be really bad. And so, like the capitalistic world, right, wrong, and different, I mean, those developers, in my opinion, are taking massive, massive risks. And so on the backside, there should be massive, massive rewards and returns. Not that I'm saying that helps housing prices by any means, but I'm telling you, somebody's got to do it. And there's got to be enough of a reward. Because like I said, could you imagine 7 years and like really there's nothing happening there yet? This year they're supposed to start the first phase of that development, but like that's maybe.
Yep. No, I was going to say like my mentor, Jim, and stuff. I mean, he was a part of development and building back in the 70s and 80s on that side. And he always told me, oh man, the 70s were great because you bought something, you did something, you could sell it and make money off of it. But then he hit the 80s and it literally almost broke him. And so, I mean, the only thing he always jokes with me that, after he finished up his whole development career, and that was including real estate as well. So he had a pretty good system going. But by the end of it, all he got from it was his work construction trailer. He didn't make anything else after that because the 80s completely took everything that he made in the 70s and blew it away on the 80s because houses would just sit there. And when you have that much inventory sitting, you got the lot rent or the lot costs, you got the house cost, the material cost, everything on top of that. And you can't even sell a house. And he's out there, you know, having barbecues and trying to bring people in on that side, just to even try and get a house sold on that end. And not even having one person come by his barbecue in a development. You know, that was one thing he told me, is that, you know, the one thing you don't want to be a part of unless you got big bankroll, like a DR Horton or something like that. Development is not really the easiest thing to be in, and is the quickest thing to lose all your money in.
Well, I mean, you know, I know we can't probably talk too much about a project, but I know you were somewhat, involved with it. Is there was a great project that was considered, but they couldn't figure out the water. There was neighborhood issues. There was sizing. I mean, and that went on for a few years, you know.
It with the city of Fort Collins and going through all that, and I can't get into very much detail on that side, but yeah, it took 5 years, and then eventually, because of the market and where they were at, the company ended up, who was going to purchase the land and develop it, ended up backing out because it just became too complicated, too costly on that side. And that
after they've already dropped how much millions, like if you could say that, if it was like what, a few $1,000,000 that they had already dropped into that project.
Yep. No, over the 5 year time frame. Yeah, that would probably be roughly what they ended up having to put into it cost wise on that side. I don't know the exact value, but I know they put a bunch of money into it to get it ready to go. And then to have it pretty much pulled from under your feet is a pretty tough deal on that side.
Yeah, man. Well, the next part that City of Fort Collins was going through is the state passed a bill that, there's going to be some water restrictions, turf restrictions, and City of Fort Collins has to basically comply with the state statutes. So they're making some accommodations with what our plans are. And, I would say there's some interesting things about non-functional turf. So like you're going to be prohibited on putting artificial turf in, except if it was for like a sporting deal.
Yep.
No invasive species. But I really wanted to show this because I thought this was most important. Here's a few examples of here's baseline. Here's all of the kind of turf, your Kentucky bluegrass, so to speak. Here's mulched shrub beds. And I believe this is the most expensive, but I'll show you. And then here is your native seed, native grass and shrubs and turf. So they're not doing away with all turf, just minimizing it. They're putting restrictions on how much requirement of water you're going to have.
Yep.
And, but here's interesting thing, right? So here's what the baseline is. This would be the installation and water fees, and then annual maintenance cost of this is for the baseline between the three different water districts, FOCO, ELCO, and Fort Collins Loveland Water District. And I mean, if you're doing shrubs, it's going to cost you. Listen, look at it. Like oh man, maybe I was trying to think myself when they were going through this. I was like, maybe your property value goes up pretty significantly. Maybe that's the only other thing that you could, justify this on. But like $39,000, $30,000, and $57,000 to save $270, $600, $370. What is that payback? Like what is that payback time period? That's 100 years?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's forever.
So, and then you get a little bit better native shrubs and native grass. The only one that costs more is the in Fort Collins Loveland Water, but you still save money. It seems like the best option if you're going to have to do it is the native grass, where you save money on all three of them, which is great, and then you save money here. So if it's allowed and if you can make it look nice, and but that will become Fort Collins. My biggest thing was just like these two plans. The only explanation if somebody doing like number one is if they believe that investing this extra $30,000 or $50,000 increases the value of your property, like in tandem with that. I mean, or you just really love shrubs.
Yep. I was going to say, you got to really love that stuff. I mean, I work on a property that's got, 600 trees on it and plenty of different shrubs and everything like that. And I'll tell you, just even the cost alone on the water bill is pretty insane on that side. And so will it add value? Maybe, but you're going to be 40, 50 years before that you might never even see it. And most people probably don't want to take care of it even afterwards on that side.
Yeah. Well, we are to the nuts and bolts of our conversation. So thank you for everyone sticking around. We are now talking about what could be one of the most altering housing catalysts in Colorado history. And that is the statewide requirement to allow the construction of ADUs on any lot that allows construction of a single family residence. And that was passed last year. And it was, what the requirement was that all municipalities, essentially if you have a municipality above 1,000 people or like a county, county-wide 40,000 is like that number. So very few areas aren't going to have to abide by this new House bill, which is House Bill 241152. I'll share my screen. But this is City of Fort Collins. Currently, they're projected to have their second reading February 7th, which would then come into play 10 business days later, or maybe it's just February 7th. It would basically become law in Fort Collins by February 15th. But here's the state House bill requiring municipalities to allow ADUs, accessory dwellings. They're not, you can't require additional parking, which that's probably a big deal. Now, there are still other guidelines that have to be met that, Clay Fricky, the city planning manager, was talking about. Like, there's still going to be setbacks and height requirements and things of that nature. They have to be objective and measurable, is what the House bill says, but they can't be subjective. HOAs can't outlaw them. They can have, some guidelines, of course. There's going to be a lot of things to flush out from this, but there's 70,000 housing units in Fort Collins. I don't know how many of those are single family detached houses, but I believe it's quite a few. I think it's around half of that is housing units, not multifamily.
Yep.
So, potentially, let's just say for number's sake, 35,000. That's potentially, you could build 35,000 ADUs.
Yep.
Not to say that will happen, but an ADU can be attached or detached. There are going to be certain rules and regulations. There's going to be, there's going to be permitting and fees. They changed some different verbiage of what an ADU is. They're going to be allowed in all zone districts where a single unit dwelling is permitted. This is your use matrix, basically saying accessory dwelling unit can be in every single one of these zones. So pretty much ADUs can be built anywhere. Now, Connor, what did you find out when I asked you a question about can they be built in as owner occupied or non-owner occupied houses?
Yeah. So after I talked to the development review board this morning on that side, just got to talk to an individual over there. Yeah, you can definitely do it on a rental unit of your own on that side. It doesn't just have to be your personal property where you have to put an ADU. The biggest thing that comes up is if you do it on a rental property, obviously the ADU unit has to be towards the back of the property. It has to be smaller than the original AD or the original residential home that is there on that end. And the biggest thing too, as well, is that it can't be a short-term rental. So it needs to be a 30-day or longer period for a rental if you are going to turn it into a secondary rental on that side. They obviously have some square footage for the land as well, where it has to be 12,000 to 10,000 square foot. And they have to be able to also
wait.
Go ahead.
There is land requirement sizes?
That's what I was able to pull off from the Fort Collins page when I was doing my research on it. And it's in obviously certain zoning districts as well. So I think there's other zoning districts that don't have this. But the biggest thing that they require is for the fire authority. So one of the biggest things that they need to do is have access to be able to get back to that ADU unit. And so they need to have a certain amount of space in between the house so that they can get their equipment and everything back there. So there is some restrictions on the square footage of the land. Like in the downtown Fort Collins area specifically was where my research was kind of originally generated from. And so they did have it where for specific land, it would have to be 10,000 square feet, or it would have to be 12,000 square feet, depending on the zoning. And there's some other ones where they have some just, and the biggest issue that comes up is going to be like utility, gas lines, sewer lines, and things like that with the easements that have to go around there. So they're just kind of giving a general idea of like the square footage of a piece of land that would actually potentially be able to accept an ADU unit. And that was one of the biggest things that I kind of ran into crux wise, where, you know, if you're going to be putting in new water lines, new sewer lines, anything like that, that have to attach to the ADU unit, it has to be far enough away from your neighbor's utilities. It has to be a certain distance away from trees and shrubs and bushes. And so that's where I think a lot of that square footage came from when I was looking at it, is just the fact that you had to have a certain amount of space to be able to manipulate around some of the pre-existing utilities that I saw, at least on the Fort Collins website.
No, I think you're right. I'm not sure about the lot size. That's something that I'm gonna have to like dig into a little bit on that.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. And there's still going to be building guidelines and restrictions that are going to allow for ADUs to be built on some lots and not on other lots. Setbacks, height requirements, like you said, lot sizes, house to ADU size. But it's going to, I would say, so like for my example of like, let's just say the 35,000 housing units. Of course, there's not going to, not all 35,000 housing units are going to be able to, just because of those setbacks, requirements, lot size, whatever, accessibility. But it will unlock a lot of properties' potential to be able to do that. And then additionally, I thought what was super interesting is there can be no neighborhood meetings about these.
Yep.
That's what I thought was super interesting. And like even then City of Fort Collins during the council meeting took it a step further and said, in fact, there can be no appeals of these decisions, because then it would generate a meeting.
Yep. No, the one thing that I did see within the Fort Collins is if there's any residents within 800 feet of the property, that you have to do a written mail notice to those individuals, but there is no meetings or anything that is needed past that.
So you're just basically telling them.
Yep, that's exactly it. Warning them that there's going to be construction.
Yeah, but nothing that they can necessarily do. I thought that was super interesting as far as that goes. There's still historic preservation standards, and there's, because actually a buddy of mine was talking about like a potential business opportunity, and he was like, I could find garages and build on top of the garages if the structure's already there. And I was like, I mean, hold on, like it maybe, yes, but like I remember we looked at a house off of like LaPorte, and there was a garage on this building, on this lot, and the garage was dilapidated, falling apart, but there was like hardware on the garage that was deemed historical and was not going to be able to be demolished. Like, and it was explicit that the listing agent goes, no, like, I know everyone's talked about ripping down this garage and building a 2-car garage here. Can't happen. It's a historic property. It's just, you just can't do it. And so to that point, you got to be a little careful, specifically downtown or anywhere that has a building over 50 years old. Honestly, you have to go through that historic review process. So there's still going to be a ton of guidelines. But February 15th, I mean, dude, we're 2 weeks out from, this being, for all intents and purposes, law in City of Fort Collins, that anyone and everyone who has a house that can basically check these boxes can build an ADU on their house.
Yeah, and I was going to just mention one thing, because I didn't finish off what I learned from the development review as well, that kind of correlates with that, is that they did have a lot of restrictions originally on like the land use codes and where you could specifically put them. Like one of them was the Poudre River 100-year floodplain zone. That was like 100% no AD units were allowed there. I believe from when I discussed with the development group during this meeting that they're going to have up here in February, that they're going to start expanding that zoning and code enforcement, and they're going to allow even more ADUs, even in the floodplain zone, in some of these other areas where it was like low density or urban estates. Those all used to be kind of restricted for ADUs, but now I think from what it sounds like in February, they're going to go in and completely take that out and allow pretty much every code zoning area to be able to build an ADU on it, from what was told to me this morning.
Well, I will say this though too, and I think we chatted about this prior, and a couple of the city council members agreed with it. Like, I think the reality is there'll be very few ADUs built in the near term, with over time and over the years, more and more coming online and being allowed to be built. And it will be a slow infill of ADUs and property. And that's just because of the cost to build these things. You know, yep. You're still basically having to go through and getting, like you said, water and sewer, permitting, impact fees, you know, so potentially before you even put a shovel in the dirt, you're at $50,000 of, you know, permitting and fees, architecture, things of that nature, and then the actual cost of building the ADU. So you could be anywhere between, I think, probably $150,000 minimum to $200,000 plus. Now, the state of Colorado also is giving incentives to municipalities that are allowing for like pre-built, not pre-manufactured homes by any means, but like pre-approved designs for ADUs. So like they're saying, hey, you can just basically like supercharge your way through this if you're agreeing to like one of these design standards. So, you know, there's a couple people that said, hi, Patrick, and woohoo, caught my favorite channel. Love you guys joining live. Appreciate it. You know, Connor and I, it's been fun talking with Connor. You know, the dialogue is great. Conversations are awesome. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, unless 3D printing, robots, you name it, I don't know what the answer is to decrease the cost of construction, but I don't think there's just going to be a ton of people who can outlay $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 to build an ADU on their house, which will then just kind of put a little hamper on how many ADUs are built.
Yeah, I mean, the codes for building a house, especially now these days, have become more structured, a little tighter on that side. So you have to have it to where it's set up as a complete house. You have to have certain, you know, regulations on the insulation and the soundness of the home. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And I mean, one of the big ones that I know that will come up depending on how big of an ADU unit that someone is going to be putting in there as well is water is a big thing on that side. So depending on how many rooms you put in there, how much water use you're already using in your home, you know, you might even have to go out and get a new water tap and everything like that, which right now is $63,800. And so and it might have gone up since then. I don't know if my research was correct on that side, but it could just get very, very expensive on that side. And with fire authority and some of the other setbacks that you're going to have as well, it's just tight regulations will cause it to where it's going to be more expensive than maybe what it's worth. But like for right now, I have a client that has a father-in-law that passed away, and they were originally going to just move out here themselves on that side, but now they got to bring their mom along with them. And so they're specifically looking to want to build an ADU on a property. And so going through and showing them, hey, here's the process. It could be a 6-month long to 24-month long process. So think that it could be a 2-year deal in how much development review you have to go through, and then having to go into the construction phase. It just takes a long time, which is money to everybody on that side. And so just over time, it's just going to it's just expensive. And, you know, for example, we just got a quote for a 700 square foot basement to get it finished out. It was $56,000 just to do a 700 square foot basement. And that was with 3 different basement building companies. And so
Did you get Cody to look at that?
Yeah, all permitted and everything like that as well. And so that's
what are you guys trying to do down there? You guys putting like the Taj Mahal of basements in that thing?
No, that's the thing. That was from 3 separate companies. And all it was just a basic bathroom and then an open space with lighting and some of that stuff. It was not.
Is that $75 a foot?
It's pretty dang close, about $80 a foot. And the individual was able to find a smaller contractor that was able to do it for about $52 a foot. But it's still expensive to build out stuff right now. And not just material costs, but I think the labor is also a very expensive feature to it as well. And so just thinking of building a whole house versus just a basement, the cost can just significantly go up. And you might not know that until you're in the process and really realizing how expensive it's about to get for you, because there's just so many different entities you have to go through before you can even start digging up the dirt for that process.
I will say, though, to the point where you've got your client whose mother or mother-in-law is going to be moving and building an ADU, go find me a 700 square foot house or a 900 square foot house.
Yep.
That you can buy for $300,000.
And I would agree on that side. You'd be on a pretty dilapidated place that's, beat up and not nearly.
And I would say a 700 to 800 square foot ADU at $300,000 would probably be like state of the art, beautiful, wonderfully done. So I think in those situations, it makes a ton of sense, and it is, not impossible to. And there's a lot of different things. You could have in-laws who come in here and watch your kids, and so there could be childcare cost offsetting. We had clients whose family moved into a house off of mountain that they're basically like, we're going to subsidize part of your rent so that you can then basically watch our kids. I will also say this as an investor. Now I haven't been investing a ton in the last, now 3 years. The last investment I bought was in 2022 because I'm not considering the cabin one. Numbers don't pencil very well. 1031 exchanges pencil because of the savings from not paying taxes.
Yep.
That's one of the few things that pencil if you're looking for capital preservation. Now, if I can build a $200,000 ADU on a property that I already own, and that's all in. I'm talking about all in. If that's what it is. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying if that's what it is, $200,000, and I can rent that out for $1,700 or $1,800. Because maybe it's a 2-bedroom. It would absolutely be a 2-bedroom, 1 or 2 bathroom ADU type deal. And I know those rent rates are anywhere probably from $1,700 to $2,500 depending on location.
Yep.
Those numbers pencil. It's something to where it's that whole 1% rule. So I think you could see investors put them on their properties to bring on another rental. And you could see a lot of mother-in-law suites and things of that nature that are built because financially it makes more sense doing that than it does going and buying a standalone detached house in Fort Collins.
Yep, 100%.
But we'll see. February 15th is a couple weeks away. I bet you they've got people waiting to submit their plans day one.
Oh, 100% on that side.
Maybe not a lot, but some. All righty. We'll finish off with quick things you can do this weekend. I've got a few. I'll let you go after me. There is the Yonder Mountain String Band Thursday, January 30th at Washington's. It's a bluegrass band. Man, if you're not looking into the Comedy Fort, I am going to pump the Comedy Fort. I am going to pump the Lincoln Center, the Aggie, the Armory, the Washington's. There is Fort Collins is punching above its weight as far as amenities and activities. So go check those out and support local. Those are local operations. Those are city government, as far as the Lincoln Center that your tax dollars are paying for to get reduced. We went to Marlon Wayne's for $70 a ticket. Now they're being sold on the secondary market for $200 to $300. Now I would not have paid that much money to go see Marlon Wayne's, but subsidized $70 ticket to go to the Lincoln Center with prime seats. Yes, please. Let's see here. Breckenridge Brewery has their last Saturday music from 4 to 6 p.m. and it's the Wado experience. Now I'm pretty sure that's a buddy of mine, not buddy of mine, but somebody who went to CSU, was an athlete at CSU, was there a little bit before me. Joe Wado. I feel bad now not knowing it. And then last week, if you're not on our newsletter, definitely send me a message, an email, whatever, give me your email. We just started sending out a newsletter a few weeks ago that, from my, of course, biased opinion, is pretty decent, but we had the Welsh Rabbit on there as far as kind of a hidden gem. And on January 28th from 6 to 8 p.m., they're going to have like 10 different drinks, non-alcoholic drinks as far as the tasting goes, along with kind of some nibbles and some bites, and that's $50 a person. But a fun thing to do, on a Tuesday night if you're looking for something to do in Fort Collins. How about you? Anything you got going on?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit most of it. The only other thing that's going to be happening at the Open Stage and Theater Company is they have a play that's going on called The 39 Steps. It's a kind of a comedic mix between a Hitchcock thriller and a Monty Python movie on that side, so it has some humor to it.
Janae just went to, I think it's called the Dear Ethan Hansen or something like that.
Oh, okay.
She just went to it on Thursday last weekend at the Lincoln Center. She said it was great.
Yeah, no, I was going to say they got some pretty good selections there. They got going Friday, January 31st, Saturday, February 1st, and Sunday, February 2nd. Tickets are $12 to $34. And so something kind of fun to go out and do. Otherwise, the only other thing too is, that now we're out of our cold plunges. Like even today right now and stuff, it's dropped dead gorgeous and stuff. Absolutely. I think the rest of the week is going to kind of look like that as well. And so getting out and going and hiking Horsetooth Reservoir or getting up or getting up to Estes Park and some of those areas is well worth it during this week and stuff, and be able to kind of get to experience some fun snow, but not without dying and freezing at -7 degrees.
Well, and the road should be safe too. Generally.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
that sun is pretty powerful. So we had somebody that commented, "Oh, nice! I'm going to be out there this weekend." So yeah, definitely. Each week we're doing this. You hopefully talk about some things that are fun to do here in Northern Colorado. But appreciate you guys all joining. Connor, thanks for doing some research on those ADUs, and congrats on the contract that you got this weekend. That's awesome.
Well, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, and then we'll be in touch next week.
All righty. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too, man. Bye.